Dudes, okay, this is a roller coaster, right? This is a bit of a cheat edition of What's Your Poison, due to some fluffy circumstances. So I stumbled on an interview I did about 2 or 3 years ago. So there's not technically a real What's Your Poison because I'm not sitting with the person drinking whiskey, although it sort of could be, as you'll hear, right? This interview was done about 2 or 3 years ago when I was doing the iRadio, and I managed to score an interview with the legend Abdullah Ibrahim. Now, Abdullah Ibrahim, he was just arrived in Cape Town. Was coming to Cape. He was just arrived in Cape Town. It was right before his 83rd birthday. This guy, this master, was born in 1934. Right, this legend. What started off, you know, first of all, it's very trippy. This interview is super trippy because it's a phone interview, so it started off quite formal, but in true sort of me style, I managed to derail it at some point and take in some radical direction. It was quite an awkward interview to begin with because it's impossible to fathom. You know, he knew Miles Davis. He played with Duke Ellington. He is. I say was. He just in this other caliber. And I always imagine, like, if you've ever seen the Miles Davis documentary, these guys. I'm not saying that this is what the sort of thing into What's Your Poison. I know they smoked a lot of weed or whatever the hell they were doing, but they speak in riddles and rhymes and poetry, and they never quite ask the question. I mean, this interview is like talking to a Buddhist ninja. You know, we talk about the hoopla bird from the world of birds, and any question I ask has some philosophical story. I mean, really historic and amazing. It's why kind of this has been sitting in an archive. I've been looking for an excuse to drop it. There's some little music pieces which I've cut out for legal reasons, but you'll just hear like a little snippet of it. But this is a pretty wild interview with the absolute legend Abdul Ibrahim, and what I would say is the first part of the interview is quite like interviewee. And at some point, it gets into philosophy, like really hectic, deep philosophy. I don't know if you know this about Abdullah Ibrahim. Jean Grey, one of the biggest hip hop females of all time, is his daughter. So like, and at some point, he gets a little bit spicy in the interview. You know, I start asking him questions, and he's taking the philosophy of life. So what I'm saying is, like, in the What's Your Poison podcast, generally, the whiskeys sort of warm up the person, and by the second half, we start sort of getting into more philosophy. These things usually warm up as they go along, and this interview is no different because by the end, he's explaining how music is who we are as human beings. He's connecting the Sand people to the Buddha people. He's talking about Kipi Muketsi and the Jazz Epistles. This is the philosophy of life, with pearls of wisdom being scattered everywhere. If you can just get through it, it's actually a much shorter interview. Anyway, I was completely honored, and I know this is a bit of a cheat episode. It's a rebroadcast, but I just felt that I was just going to drop this into your laps. And this is just a random interview from the iRadio from 3 years ago that I did with. Oh, I'll just tell you another quick story. I met him when he was here. I got invited to the concert, and I got him to sign all my LPs. That's good on me. And we had a mad chat about Kipi Mokwetsi. And I think we spoke then. In fact, if you go back a few episodes, this is all coming back to me now. When I was chatting to Spook Matambo, we spoke about doing a documentary on Kipi. And he told me that if I ever did a documentary on Kipi, that he would help me do it. And what I'm kind of thinking now, having listened to this interview again now, all these years later, maybe now's the time we can do either a podcast or an audio documentary, or start putting pieces together for Kipi. If Netflix, they won't care. Here is the true icon, the legend, Abdullah Ibrahim, on What's Your Poison, kind of, not really. This is not really a What's Your Poison. This is a sort of departure from What's Your Poison, but it's a sexy lollipop for your ears. Well, what an unbelievable honor and a privilege to have the legend Abdullah Ibrahim back in town. Welcome back to Cape Town. Well, home. Welcome home.
Yeah, thank you very much. Legend is a bit a bit challenging. I'm just
Must I make it
a
bigger?
worker like everybody else, inundated with work, practice, practice, practice.
Well, happy birthday for Monday.
Oh, thank you very much. Very kind of you.
And I mean, you brought up an interesting point now already. I'd like to hear about your concept for this show around your 83rd birthday, particularly as you've just mentioned, you see yourself as a worker as opposed to a legend.
Well, if you're a legend, it means you've done everything, right? The treacherous waters that we're wading into. No, for us, it's a continuous revisiting our compositions, upgrading them. Unlike other genres, if I write a composition, even something that I wrote when I was 7 years of age, it still resonates because we find so much. I find so much activity and information in just this one little song that keeps on expanding. It's not that the song expands, but our intimate and knowledge of who we are and of the universe, it keeps on expanding, because if everything comes at once, we will not be able to handle that load. So this is on a daily basis that I do is rehearse and revisit the songs.
What is the concept for this show this weekend?
Well, I do these concerts internationally. Solo piano is one of the modules. I also do my jazz unit from New York, big band, voices, philharmonic orchestra pieces. Solo piano is really where it all starts, because as a composer, that's where the composition starts, and then it expands into all of these different modules. So solo piano is it's wonderful in the sense that it really releases you from all the other restrictions that you might have. Unless you have found, like I have done now with my musicians in New York, people who really understand and who can actually break out of that mold and improvise. So the concept of the solo piano is that I play some of my older compositions, which are always revamped, and some newer compositions as well, and things that and projects that are in process of being completed.
Beautiful. I can't wait to see the show.
Me too.
Hey, so talking about going back
but
to
you see, but perhaps you should say to hear the show.
Or both.
Because nowadays I see young people say, "Have you seen the new CD?"
What's a CD?
Yeah. What is a CD? Precisely as I'm saying. You're stuck in something in the past.
Mm. I mean,
it's almost like stuck in time warp. But sound is something that permeates the whole universe forever. So, in some sense, I'm not really involved in music. I'm not a jazz musician. Right? What I am involved in is trying to understand and the cosmology of sound from its earliest into the future. We deal with sound.
I mean, just following on from that and the things you've just been saying about kind of going back to your roots of just being a solo, playing solo piano. And with this sort of milestone show, I think, that seems to be overlooking your career. Can you, from a sound perspective, maybe paint a picture of Cape Town back? You just mentioned about writing a composition from 7 already. Like, what was the sound of Cape Town back then?
When I started composing, when I was 7 years of age in Kensington and in District 6, writing these pieces, there's always been some hostility to what I create. I mean, the in-depth and expanded composition. So the sound of Cape Town is like the sound everywhere in the world. Every region, every city has its own cosmology of sound and activity and in history. So in Cape Town, writing these compositions in Cape Town, 6 where I stayed, through the years I used to walk the street streets of Cape Town at night. Go Table Mountain. Those times you could still overnight at Table Mountain, walk the beaches, walk the District 6, and write compositions inspired by these activities. And I was looking for a sound. Many years later, I realized what I was looking for was not the sound. I was looking for silence. So this is the silence of the night and the silence within ourselves that we're looking for. So in that respect, one deals with one's own ego. So understanding the ego and understanding that what we have is a gift from God, and that we have to be as sincere as possible. What we live, and especially in concert, especially solo piano concert, the idea is to be as sincere as possible. Because if you fake, the audience will pick it up. So I have huge respect for the audience. So the concerts are actually the audience and myself embarking on a journey.
I was actually wanting to ask you, I've read about you been studying Buddha for 50 years in Japan.
Yes, sir.
So this philosophy that you are communicating now, has that come during the studies of that, or was this how you were thinking back when you were in your teens?
I don't know what I was thinking, because whatever you engage in, whatever activity you engage in, it should open the vistas of the universe to you. I think that is what is meant by learning. So here in Cape Town, I had what we have here. For example, we don't have teachers; we have mentors, and people can show you, open the way of how to move ahead. I have a project in what is called the Green Kalahari in the Northern Cape, and a project I call the project Ancient Tradition, New Relevance. Ancient Tradition, New Relevance. Also, one of my songs, which I wrote some years ago, Water from an Ancient Well. We have water restriction and problems now in Cape Town. We foresaw this long ago. So water from an ancient well does not mean that you go physically to drink the water from that well. The idea is that we should, from the ancients, we should glean this knowledge of how we interact with our immediate environment and the universe, and this respect for nature, the respect for water especially. And if we don't do it, of course, like everything else, every action has got a reaction equal and opposite to it. So perhaps we are reaping what we sowed. And we do not understand that we are closely connected in our thoughts with water. We have this project in the Northern Cape where we've been engaging with the San people now for many years. And this principle of understanding this now, the Buddha in Japan, I found that the cosmology of ancient Japan is the same with the San people in the Northern Cape. It's the same with all hunter-gatherers all over the world. We do not say that you have to stay there and be a hunter-gatherer in that concept. Okay. But at least take from the ancient ones. Now, Buddha is the same principle. So it doesn't matter what creative activity you're involved in, eventually you will come to you land at that spot. Now, Buddha, there was a very famous sword master in Japan, Miyamoto Musashi. And when he was about 60, 70 years of age, he retired and started writing his memoirs and his work. Now, one of these works, a very iconic work, it's called The Book of Five Rings, which alludes to the five elements, water, fire. Now, and this book of Five Rings, Go Rinosho, is used by all Japanese businessmen in business. because it's the same principle. And the same principle that we play the music, we play so-called jazz music, okay, is that we improvise, but when you go into improvisation, you go into a place that you've never been before. So it's terrifying. But you prepare yourself with practice and practice. And Budo, for example, training and training every day basics. Because there are no secrets. They're only basics. Then you are armed. You have this armor of going into any situation fearlessly. This is where the connection between Budo and ancient Budo, we call it Koryo Budo, which is the traditional mindset, and the San people in the Northern Cape. This is the connection with Budo and our music. It's got nothing to do with fighting. My teacher says if they want to fight, call the police.
So how do you you sit down at the piano, you raise your fingers up to the notes. How do you channel this deep philosophy that you are explaining now? How does that translate itself into your music, your performance, and what you do?
I have no idea.
Is that the magic you're talking about?
I don't have no idea. If I did, I would be a very successful businessman.
If I could just briefly take you back to earlier about sort of the Cape Town, your youth in Cape Town. And I wanted to know if you could suggest some music or a sound that for you defined that time. Not necessarily something of yours, but maybe something that inspired you or something that you still...
the World of Birds.
The place or an album?
The World of Birds in Hout Bay.
Yes, I know it well.
Yes, sir. There are birds from all over the world. Yeah. There's also a hoopoe bird called the hoopoe bird. So this is the bird that told King Solomon about Queen Sheba. We also have black eagle. A few years ago, I visited there. Normally, when I come to Cape Town, it's one of my one of the places that I visited. It was in Black Eagle. But we found it very strange because the eagle, all the birds were encaged, but this one was not. And when I inquired about it, I said, well, why? He said, well, what happened with the bird? He said, the bird is blind in one eye, and the one wing is not functional anymore. So apparently the eagle was hit by a car, and they took it for rehabilitation to the World of Birds. Then they have a lady, I can't recall her name, who actually still maintains this wonderful quality of being able to communicate with the birds. So she'd been like in this healing process for the bird, asking the bird, right, what happened to you? And what happened? And the bird said these words, I was abused when I was young. So she asked the bird now, what would you like to do in your life? And the bird said, I wish that I can fly again. Right? This is the black eagle. This black eagle is our iconic bird here. Yeah, that's the sound. You asked me about the sound of Cape Town.
I see. And so, I mean, can you directly translate that to music you've made where you feel you've encaptured?
Well, I'm writing something right now. I'm composing something. Oh, that's an idea. Perhaps I'll present it tomorrow on Saturday at the concert.
Sure. My publisher will send you my details. Just joking.
Give me your bank account. Give me your password.
If I could just talk briefly and related to this about obviously the jazz epistles, that group, so iconic. I mean, obviously in terms of the time, but what did you see in these musicians that inspired you and made you put this group together? I mean, what an incredible lineup, and obviously particularly with Kippy. What did you see in these guys?
Yeah, at that early age, this was in the 50s. both aspiring young musicians, and we, besides the norm, in terms of sound, in terms politically, socially, we were hearing something totally different. Not forgetting our basic roots, but what I understood was that we had to deal with a code of silence, and this code of silence translates into code of conduct. So this came from this code of silence and code of conduct came from regime level to community level to family level to individual level. So you had to conduct yourself according to these norms that you were not able to challenge, you were not able to speak about, and was imposed on you. But through the music and our mentors here, we understood that this, well, maybe it was destiny, but it was a completely alien way to understand who we are. So we started composing and writing music. And at that time, all the new music that I wrote at that time, people were hostile here in Cape Town. They were very hostile.
Do you mean the audience?
They used to boo me off. Yeah. They used to boo me off the stage. What did they do? Right.
For what reason?
But we
Please
persisted.
explain that.
Pardon?
Explain what...
Because it was not norm, you see.
I see. Because
it
was
not
bebop.
norm. This is what are you supposed to sound like? Even today, well, that's why I hardly record much, because the record companies still edit my music. If I compose a piece, or the like television shows, radio shows, wherever, this when we play back, this is not what I played. It's still today.
Whoa, hold on a second.
Because
I'm not understanding what
No, it's this principle that that we do not have the mental capacity to deal with intricate things such as mathematics, or when I play intricate, music, which for me is simple, and people misinterpret it as being strange. You see, it means then the analogy is that I haven't got the mental capacity to think that way. It's very, very deep and it still persists. That time with Jazz Epistle, when I started writing this music here, I heard about Kippie Moeketsi. And then I was fortunate that I went on tour with him, with the Manhattan Brothers. And all in that band, everybody was in there. Hugh Masekela, Jonas Gwangwa, Abigail Kobeka, Tandy Klaasen, Makay Davash. This was the cream of the crop of South African musicians, and that's where it started. We were on tour in the Eastern Cape for about 2 months. Then they broke up and came back, and then I had to get to Kippie, because we made this bond between us musically. We had to break out of this, because Kippie used to play Mozart's clarinet concerto. You see, it was at that level that we operated. And so I wanted to get to Johannesburg. I didn't have any money, so I walked from Cape Town to Johannesburg and back again 3 times for this music. So then with Kippie Moeketsi, then in Cape Town, I met Johnny Gertz, a bass player, and Makaya and Jogo. This was his first drummer from Langa. This was the first time that he ever played music. And then we went to Johannesburg. There was Kippie Moeketsi, and then Kippie brought in Hugh Masekela and Jonas Gwangwa. And we played the music that we wanted to play. And the response from the people was unbelievable. But the industry, like always and ever, they had no idea what we're doing. Still today. They thought when I wanted to record solo piano, the thing was always that I'm a little crazy in the head. I'm a little, I am.
Well, it served you well so far. So I'd like to ask you possibly not a controversial question, but something that resonates deeply with me. I've got a whole bunch of... So at our radio station, we're building what we want is South Africa's, I hope to be, most important jazz vinyl library. And I've got in front of me Anatomy of a South African Village. And on the back, you have this quote, and I'll get to the relevance of this, where Africa is probably the only place where musicians can still be a part of society with their music. And this is important for when a music is separated from its roots, it loses its value. and Africa is where the music of the future will come from. It has been influencing Western music for centuries anyway. Now that very much sums up the ideology of what we're doing here at the Eye and the type of shows we're doing, and we're investing in particularly the legacy artists of this country who I think have largely been ignored. And my question is really about the way and sort of the terrible way that Kippy passed away, sort of broke and angry. That still persists today in South African music, in the jazz community. Almost every single year, 2 times a year even, there's a big newspaper article. This legend has passed away, broke. How could this be? And we're investing in this project here at the Eye, literally to try and turn this around. What are your views on this, and how are we at this place?
Well, if you look at this, this is not unique to South Africa. When we went to New York with the late Satima B. Benjamin, incredible musician. When we arrived in the 60s in New York, the reason why she had problem breaking through was because it was the end of an era, you see, of jazz singers. Ella Fitzgerald had gone, Sarah Vaughan gone, and all the songwriters were gone. So there are these eras that co-cycle and recycle. So at an earlier age, I understood that I do not follow fashion. I have my own style, because fashion will become unfashionable, but style will always be in fashion, right? So this is what we are inundated with here. There are these cycles with the music, and also what people can conceive to be a commercial value. They have these cycles, so it's like a throwaway culture. This is happening now today. If you're going to see young people, 20, 30 years of age, they're spent. They're spent. Their musical or creative career is done because of this throwaway culture concept that we have. When we go to New York, Ellington, big fans of Ellington, studied with Ellington. Duke was paying his band out of his family's legacy. He was without work in New York for 10 years. Thelonious Monk was without work in New York for 10 years. When I arrived in New York, I was without work for 15 years. Right? Yes, South Africa, we visited in the same dynamic. It's even more acute, because we do not have an inkling of the value that we have in our tradition. It's immense. Now, for years, I've been trying to get South African musicians to play traditional music. They didn't want to, because they're city sophisticates, you see. And traditional music is urban music of people who don't know anything. Basil Coetzee was the first one who took it on. And when I first told him about it, he said, "Yeah, well, this stuff is just easy, man." I said, "Let's play it." And he realized the intricacy of it. Now, this is what at heart, and it's got nothing to do with our music or anything. It's how it is perceived. See, I said to myself, how is it that India produces so many people in high tech, right, on a daily basis? Then I trace it back to the music. Indian music, very, very delicate, and I studied Indian ragas and talas when I was 14 years of age here in Cape Town. Everybody told me I was cook in the head, right? Because it gives you that wide perspective of rhythmic and melodic and harmonic impulses that is not basic to 4/4. Here we live in houses, everything is 4/4. The music is 4/4. And somebody wrote something in 3/4, he became a millionaire. And somebody wrote something in 5/4, he became a millionaire. But in our tradition, if you go out in the areas, young people and old people sing 9/4, 12, 17, no problem. But we do not accept it. You see? Because it's below our dignity, because we are city sophisticates.
Are you? Sorry, can I just clarify? Are you saying there is a difference between the music that people listen to and the music that the industry allows? Is there a separation there, or are you just saying it's one and the same?
No, mostly people don't listen to music; they listen to instruments.
Right.
Mhm.
So what do you?
We have to be very definitive about when you say music. What do we mean? Because when you say music, there's a connotation of something that is there, you know. But what is it? What do you mean when you say music? When you say sound, this is another
Right.
dynamic.
You know, dream scenario. What is a solution that you see is a possibility? I mean, would you be interested in collaborating with modern, like pop stars of note as a mentor and a collaborator? Or
You know who my daughter is, right?
Absolutely, and I'm a big fan. And for
Yeah,
those
Jean
listening,
Grey.
Jean Grey, one of the great, not female hip hop, one of the great hip hop artists in the world.
Yeah, I interviewed her. She said, my daddy is a rapper. All these genres, you know, you're talking about hip hop music and jazz music and reggae music. They once asked Louis Armstrong, I said, Satchmo, what is your opinion of folk music? And he said, all music is folk music. I never heard a horse sing.
For me, it's not even about music. It's about preserving culture and heritage, history. And so it's...
What do you want to preserve? What do you want to preserve culture for?
Well, I mean, those who have contributed greatly to yourself included.
Yeah, but what is the purpose of this?
What is the purpose of recognizing our history?
No, what are you going to do with your history?
You...
This is why I say my project is ancient tradition, new relevance.
Well, that's exactly it. So we're speaking the same language.
Everything that we do is that there must be an application of what it is that you're trying to... It must be applied. It can't sit there somewhere in somebody's head or in a book somewhere. It must be applied. And right now we have to apply it in our communities.
But can you...
People, there's massive joblessness in this country, in fact, on an international level.
Yes.
So this is what we need to address. So the tradition has to be applied, but how are you going to apply it?
But how do you apply? Don't you think that there needs to be a communication of that heritage before it can be applied? If you don't know that it's there, if you're a millennial of today, and as you've pointed out, traditional music.
Excuse me. We are in communication for millions and millions of years with each other. See, we have something called transmission. But we spell it Trance, transmission. This is in our cosmology.
Can you explain that?
Well, how do you pass on information?
Email?
Here you go.
So are you saying that it's all around us, regardless, it's there, whether you can see it or you can't?
This is something that you say, if you... if we have to explain this to you, we have to explain to you, you have to come to the Kalahari and we sit down with you for a couple of days and see the stars. You see.
I'm available. Let's
do
it.
The animals. Yeah, look at our cosmology. Then understand what it is that we are about.
Mr. Ibrahim, it's such a pleasure talking to you. Can I ask you one last question before I let you go?
Yeah, sure.
This weekend is a milestone, really. 83 years. Happy birthday again.
No, thank you.
And if you look at your ongoing career, what has been something that you think has been your biggest challenge that you've ever faced? And secondly, what is the thing you are most proud of?
Well, I'm going to say the biggest challenge. There are really no challenges. They're only goalposts. You know, this concept of a mistake. In our understanding cosmology, there's no such thing as a mistake. How can something be a mistake? Everything that happens is logical. A mistake is something that an event that has arisen in your on your journey that you have to resolve. There are no mistakes. Thelonious Monk said, the piano ain't got no wrong notes. The piano ain't got no wrong notes.
It's 88 right notes.
Yeah, no, the 88 notes, that is you. Do you have any wrong notes?
Maybe a few.
There we go.
Final.
That's the quest.
I promise to let you go.
Yeah.
For you, your greatest song or piece of music of all time?
Tomorrow and Saturday at Outscape.
Now that I like. CompuTicket tickets, the legend, Mr. Abdullah Ibrahim. It's been such a pleasure having you on the Eye. We look forward to seeing you Friday, Saturday at Artscape. Go well, sir.
Pleasure.